So before we get into this Hamas ceasefire, let me kind of fill you guys in. So as you guys know, right now as we speak, Israel is preparing an offensive to take over the Gaza Strip. Okay. Now, they don't want to say this, but what's realistically going to happen from this point forward is they're going to go ahead and, get rid of these Palestinians. There's 1 million to 2 million Palestinians that are left of 100,000 plus that were probably killed. We know that we just crossed into 62,000 that were dead as of recently. But again, this does not account for all the people that are missing or died from starvation or died from, preventable illnesses or, injuries. So we know 62,000 are dead, but there's way more that died than that. So now Israel's going to go ahead and do their last part of the offensive where they're going to come in and take over the Gaza Strip, right? And this has sparked a significant amount of outrage in Israel, right? Because number one, them going in is going to put the hostages at risk because the area that they're going to go into, the last frontier basically, is where the IDF thinks, or the Israeli government thinks, that a majority of the hostages are going to be held. I think there's something like 50 of them left, right? 50 to 100 of them left. I can't remember exactly. But the point is that there's been a ridiculous amount of protests because they want the war to end, get the hostages back, stop starving the kids, etc. Because Israel's taking a lot of hits, guys, from a public image standpoint, okay? Netanyahu is wildly unpopular in Israel. And I've been telling you guys this for a minute. He doesn't care about the hostages. And the people are finally starting to see through it. I told you guys this a year ago that he didn't give a shit about the hostages. He had an opportunity to get them back on October 10th. I showed you guys on Israeli media. And he declined that. He invaded anyway and started bombing them because for him, this was the perfect excuse to get out of his corruption trial and then go ahead and be able to effectuate 100% power consolidation to himself as prime minister and stave off the criminal case that he's facing right now with corruption and bribery, which he's looking at like 10 years, guys, with that. That investigation started sometime around 2016. And, they've been coming after him for accepting luxurious gifts and all this other bullshit. So he's able to wage war on his enemies, right? He's able to stay out of jail and maintain power. It's a W for him. So he has no incentive whatsoever to stop the conflict. He's fucking dragging this out as long as he can with getting the hostages back. Now, obviously, the people of Israel have been rioting and they're pissed off about this shit because they see the writing on the wall here. And they know that this last offensive is more than likely going to kill the remaining hostages. They're going to get starved. They're going to get bombed. They're going to get killed because a lot of these hostages that were killed by Israeli airstrikes. As much as the Israeli government doesn't want to admit this, it was the Israelis that killed them. Because just from a pragmatic standpoint, chat, why the hell would Hamas go through the trouble of kidnapping these guys to kill them in Gaza? That's stupid. That's the only political card they have, is to keep the hostages alive and use them as leverage to get their prisoners back, okay? This is how it goes. They go in, kidnap as many people as they can, use those guys to get back Palestinians that are being, unjustly held over in Israel, which Israel, by the way, has hundreds of Palestinians, kids, women, men that are there without charge, without any type of due process, and they've been there for years, okay? So that's a big reason why they do these operations. They go in there and take it. Again, or they kidnap people. Now, I'm not here to justify it. I'm just explaining to you guys why they do what they do. So it just doesn't make pragmatic sense to kill off your only leverage, right? Politically, the only chip you have. So, and the reason why is because they want to get a permanent ceasefire, right? The Hamas, but the Israelis don't want that, right? They don't, for obvious reasons. So there's been an enormous amount of protests because people are catching on to this shit that this last offensive can get the hostages killed. Netanyahu doesn't care enough about the hostages, and they want one deal, one comprehensive deal that ends the war and gets all the hostages back. But the Israeli government does not want to do that. So don't, whatever the fucking Israeli media tells you guys, like, oh yeah, Hamas are not, being cooperative or whatever. The reason why is because the Israelis want a war to continue. Hamas is okay with giving them the rest of the hostages, but they want the war to permanently end, and the Israelis will not accept that. Because the goal was always about ethnically cleansing and getting them the fuck out of there. That was always the goal. Okay? So, let's go ahead and get into this clip that I have here. Look at these, and we're going to talk about the Hamas ceasefire.
This is crazy, and it finally happened.
And this is going on in Tel Aviv. The caption reads, this is massive, the largest anti-war rally in Israel since October 7th.
Hundreds of thousands of Israelis are marching right now in the streets of Tel Aviv, demanding to end this annihilation war, to bring back all the hostages in a deal. Finally, so many people in Israel are demanding this government to go home, demanding to end the war. We are here standing together, a movement of Jews and Palestinians. We are here also demanding life to the Palestinians, demanding to end the starvation, demanding life to the children in Gaza. This is the only way to move forward.
And I mean, shout out to him for showing some compassion, man. As an Israeli. And this is the thing, guys. Gaza's like 50% kids, by the way. FYI. 50% of Gaza is kids, under 18. All right, let's go ahead and, like I told you guys before, I watched Israeli media. Let's go ahead and get this from the Israeli side with the news as far as like the ceasefire goes.
This is ILTV on the hour, bringing you the biggest stories from Israel and the Middle East in just 5 minutes. I'm Devo Klein, and today is day 683 of the war in Gaza. Let's get into all of the top headlines at this hour. Hamas has responded to the framework for a hostage for ceasefire deal proposed by mediators in Cairo, and in a surprising first in many months, Hamas said yes. According to a report by Axios, Hamas gave a positive response to a deal that would include a 60-day pause in fighting and the release of 10 living hostages. This in exchange for 150 Palestinian security prisoners to be released from Israeli prisons. The deal would also include the release of some bodies of the slain hostages. Now, the remaining hostages would be released in a second phase, with immediate negotiations to follow for a broader deal for a permanent end to the war in Gaza with international guarantees.
Now, that's what Israel does not want. Israel does not want a permanent end to the war, because if you permanently end the war, it's going to make it significantly harder for them to go ahead and kick them out.
According to mediators, Hamas has backed down from most of the demands raised earlier that led to the collapse of the recent rounds of talks last month. Although Israel has yet to publish an official response to Hamas, it's reported that the IDF is still preparing for the Gaza City takeover plan. Now, Hamas's positive response has put a spin in the works, and experts are speculating that the military pressure from the IDF and the threat of the Gaza City takeover plan had ultimately put enough pressure on Hamas to bring them to agreeing to a deal. Speaking from the Prime Minister's office, Netanyahu confirmed that the pressure on Hamas is working. Have a listen.
Okay, he says, I wish you, citizens of Israel, three things. First, I expressed on behalf of the Israeli government, on my own behalf, immense appreciation for the tremendous achievements of the IDF in the War of Revival, the War on Seven Fronts. Secondly, I was impressed by the fighting spirit and determination to complete the defeat of Hamas and the release of all our hostages.
התרשמתי מרוח הקרב והנחישות להשלים את הכרעת החמאס ושחרור כל חטופינו. שלישית, שוחחתי עם שר הביטחון והרמטכ"ל.
Thirdly, I spoke with the defense minister and the chief of staff about our plans regarding the city of Gaza and the completion of our missions.
על התוכניות שלנו לגבי העיר עזה והשלמת משימותינו.
And like you, I hear the reports in the media, and from them you can gather one thing: Hamas is under atomic pressure.
כמוכם, שומע את הדיווחים בתקשורת, ומהם אתם יכולים להתרשם מדבר אחד. החמאס נמצא בלחץ אטומי.
These comments by the Prime Minister followed a string of tweets posted by U.S. President Donald Trump to his Truth Social account. One of the tweets read, quote, "The hostages will only be released when Hamas is confronted and destroyed." Trump, of course, was referring to the military pressure on Hamas, and the American president's message was received in Jerusalem as backing for Israel's plan for Gaza City. And it's day 683 of the war in Gaza, and it's one of the most significant days in terms of movement. The IDF plan to capture Gaza City is moving forward, and reports of tank movement are being reported on the outskirts of Gaza City. As the fresh IDF offensive looms, thousands of Palestinian civilians are already fleeing their homes in Gaza City from the easternmost parts of the city, which is already being subject to airstrikes. A question that still remains is the humanitarian case in the enclave, as the IDF prepares to evacuate over 1 million Gaza City residents to safe locations. Touring the Rafah border with the Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mustafa, Egyptian Foreign Minister Abdelati said his country is willing to join a potential international force deployed in war-torn Gaza, but only if backed.
Yeah, so what they're saying is, so after, the Israelis contain it or whatever, apparently there's going to be combination of different countries, militaries working together to secure the Strip and having like kind of like an interim rule as they find another group to take over the Strip.
By a UN resolution. And U.S. envoy Steve Barracks urged Israel to cooperate with the Lebanese government and withdraw from strategic points it previously held in southern Lebanon.
Yo, that's hilarious, bro. There was supposed to be a ceasefire a year ago plus, guys. They had a ceasefire at the end of last year, and the Israelis are still bombing and occupying southern Lebanon.
In pursuit of...
And then they wonder why these guys are not, Hezbollah's not going to drop their arms.
Disarming Hezbollah. So far, Hezbollah has rejected the demand to disarm by the Lebanese government. But
yeah, so Hezbollah, guys, for those, you know what, because I know we got a lot of you guys here that are new and might not be familiar with this stuff.
Well, Hamas has accepted the terms of the latest ceasefire proposal presented by Qatari and Egyptian mediators on Sunday. It includes provision for a 60-day truce for the return of half of the Israeli captives held in Gaza. On Monday, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi met Qatar's Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani in Cairo. In a statement, both leaders stressed the importance of a ceasefire and rejected Israel's plan to seize Gaza City and forcibly displace Palestinians. Israel is yet to respond to the proposal.
Yeah, they're going to do it anyway, bro. These Gulf state guys aren't going to do shit. And Egypt is totally cucked to Israel.
Well, for more on this,
they get the second most aid.
We are joined now by Adnan Hashni, who is a professor of international relations and US foreign policy at Qatar University. Thanks very much for being with us here today. First of all, 60-day ceasefire, return of half the captives is what's part of this latest proposal. What do you think has prompted Hamas to agree to this now?
Well, I think Hamas has taken into consideration the international momentum of the sympathy with the Palestinian people. A lot of countries are reaching to the point that what Israel is doing in Gaza, it's unprecedented, it's not acceptable. A lot of countries, even European countries, calling for recognition of a Palestinian state next.
Yes, there has been some political pressure, guys. As you guys know, France said that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state. The UK said that they will recognize a Palestinian state if Israel doesn't stop its offensive with the starvation. So there's been an enormous amount of pressure to kind of bring this thing to a resolution.
Month on September, and there's a lot of sympathy, as I said, and Hamas reached to the point. This is what they really want. They want a ceasefire, and they have no problem exchanging captives for prisoners. And maybe this is what they need. They need an exit strategy for them and a relief for the Palestinian people. And the Palestinian people in Gaza are living under severe conditions. And this ceasefire, if it accepted by Israel, by Netanyahu, will be an exit strategy for them and will be a way to relieve the Palestinians and provide the humanitarian needs that is really needed by the people there.
As we have seen, this proposal is now with Israel, as we've mentioned. I mean, we've seen huge protests there over the last few days, demanding some sort of way forward. Do you think that this is going to be enough? This proposal that's in front of them right now will be enough for Netanyahu to sign on?
Well, it's very hard to predict what Netanyahu will do, because this exact proposal was accepted, was introduced by the United States by Witkoff, I think, previously back in a few weeks.
As you guys know, Steve Witkoff is like the special envoy for Trump. He's been doing a lot of the diplomacy, especially in the Middle East. So this deal that they're kind of rehashing here is a deal that Witkoff had originally posed before that they couldn't agree on a couple of weeks back.
And it was accepted by Israel, not accepted by Hamas, because Hamas wanted more security guarantee.
AKA a permanent ceasefire, because the thing is that if they give hostages back, what's stopping the Israelis from coming in and completely decimating them and, taking the land?
Now I think it has to be the call from Israel. It's very hard to predict what Netanyahu wants, but if you look at the action on the ground, if you look at the proposal, what Israel is doing and Netanyahu, I don't think this is exactly what they want. They are not interested in peace. They are not interested in a ceasefire. Maybe they're interested in the releasing the captives. There are a lot under pressure from the public, but they're also, Netanyahu is under a lot of pressure from the extreme right and
he has a lot of pressure from him on the left as well, because you guys can see they're literally taking to the streets and protesting crazy.
Fate of his government is under question if he accepted the ceasefire, and he got a kind of a support from the Trump and Witkoff lately that is supposed to be all or but nothing. They want all the hostages released, and there's a lot of support coming from Trump to destroy Hamas, and they give him maybe a lot of support to go ahead with what he is doing right now in Gaza.
Obviously, you are an expert on US foreign policy. You mentioned Donald Trump there. He's obviously been focused the last couple of days on the war in Ukraine and trying to bring that to an end. What do you think he is going to make of this proposal that Hamas has accepted? How much pressure will he be willing to bring to bear on Netanyahu and his far-right coalition partners to make sure that they step up and they agree to this proposal as well, do you think?
He also wants to always to be appeared as the winner, the deal maker, the peacemaker, and he wants to come from him because he introduced the ceasefire initially, I think, before he comes to the White office. If it comes from him, that will give him a lot of credit, because he brags about reaching maybe 6 peace agreements in the world. Maybe if this is the case, why not? And I think the Palestinian, all the people, the international community want this to stop, and they want the ceasefire maybe to work. And maybe in the future, there'll be more negotiations about where we...
All right, so that's from Al Jazeera, and then we'll do this last one here.
Mediators is based on... That proposal from Qatari and Egyptian mediators is based on 2 phases. Hamas would release the remaining hostages in 2 phases during a 60-day ceasefire. And during that ceasefire, negotiations would begin for a permanent end to the war. Now, in terms of how significant this is, we have been here before, of course. If this proposal sounds familiar, it's because it's based on a similar plan by the US envoy Steve Witkoff back in June. But those talks later collapsed.
And I want you guys to kind of notice the differences between the 3 different... There's a reason why I'm showing you guys 3 different media things covering the same story. One is Israeli media, then I showed you Al Jazeera, and now I'm showing you something from a more neutral station.
And since then, Israel hardens its stance, saying that they would only agree to a deal in which all of the hostages were released in one go, and other conditions, including that Hamas disarms. And it seems this evening that their position hasn't changed, according to an official quoted in the Israeli media. Benjamin Netanyahu was asked about this in the last hour or so. He didn't comment directly, but have a listen to what he did say.
I spoke with the Minister of Defence and the Chief of Staff about our plans for Gaza City and the completion of our missions. And like you, I hear the reports in the media. And from them, you get one impression. Hamas is under massive pressure.
And Darshana, it looks as if plans to occupy the whole of Gaza City, which had not been occupied before, are now actually going ahead.
Yeah, even as we got news of Hamas accepting this deal, Israeli tanks rolled over the border into Gaza. It's a show of strength and a significant escalation over its plans to conquer Gaza City. They say this is the quickest way to end the war and to defeat Hamas. They've already started a bombing campaign there, and it's prompted thousands of Palestinians to have to forcibly flee their homes. Over 1 million residents were sheltering in Gaza City. They had already fled from other areas. Now they're
And this is where the idea predicts a lot of the, there might be some hostages there.
Being forced to leave again, and they're asking, where to? Where should we be going to? In response, the Israeli government has said that they'll provide them with tents. It's something that's prompted huge international criticism, but also criticism here internally in Israel. Yesterday, we saw a general strike, a day of action across this country. Incredible scenes. We saw hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets to protest against the government's plans. They were calling for an immediate end to the war and for a deal that returns all of the hostages. So far, the government seems intent on ignoring them. In fact, Netanyahu...
All right, for some of you guys that might be ahead in time, code should be working for you now. Some of you guys I think are like in Europe or some shit. So yeah, OSS Army 110, it'll work for you guys now. So use the code, get in for $1. Sale ends as soon as I get off air. And the merch discount ends once I get off air as well. So get your merch, get into the OSS for $1. Last chance, this because prices go back to regular cost tomorrow.
Who prompted criticism by suggesting that those who had taken to the streets to protest had enabled Hamas. He may be feeling emboldened by Donald Trump's apparent support today for his Gaza plan. The US president wrote on social media, "We will only see the return of the remaining hostages when Hamas is confronted and destroyed. The sooner this takes place," he said, "the better the chances of success will be."
Darshan in Tel Aviv, thank you very much indeed. Well, earlier I spoke to Oren Marmorstein, a spokesperson for Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I asked what he made of news that Hamas had agreed to a ceasefire plan.
So I'm not familiar with the details of this recent report that you mentioned, but I can share with you and with the audience what we know so far. First, about Israel. We want to end this war. We are very clear about this. And we...
That's a lie from the Israeli government, as always. They do not want to end the war. They want the war to continue on, especially Benjamin Netanyahu, keeps them out of jail.
We said yes.
But you've just voted to extend it.
No. We said yes to every proposal that was put on the table by the American mediator, Steve Witkoff, and we said yes time and again. But Hamas doesn't want a deal. Kept refusing and basically spreading a smokescreen, not coming to the table and not agreeing to release the hostages and to have a ceasefire.
But they have just hang on a second, they've just agreed to release
oh man,
10 living hostages in return for a 60-day ceasefire. This is what is on the wires. I'm not doubting it, and I don't think you'll be doubting it either. The question is whether you would accept it or not. I mean, I tell you who would love to see that deal accepted, and that is the tens of thousands of people on the street.
I'll be honest with you guys, one of the hardest jobs that you can have right now in 2025 is being an Israeli government spokesperson. Holy, bro. Yo, I would not want that job, dude. Bruh. Could you imagine having to sit there and like be like, you're committing a genocide, self-defense. You killed 30,000 innocent children. Never again. Bro, being an Israeli government spokesperson has got to be the hardest job ever right now, dude. Holy.
Streets of Tel Aviv demonstrating against your cabinet's latest decision to continue the war.
So first, in terms of doubt, yes, I am doubting it. I think you should doubt it. I think the audience should doubt everything that comes out of Hamas, because those are terrorists. And you know what? Just to share with the audience.
Now, very important that you guys kind of see the propaganda here. Like, they look at it like, oh, well, anything they say is a lie because they're terrorists, so anything we say is true. See like the kind of implication there? Like, they're terrorists, so therefore everything they say, they're lying, right? We can't believe anything that they're doing. And this is very strategic by the Israeli government to do this. Language is very important with the way that they frame things. You guys notice that, like, when Hamas does what it does, it's a terrorist attack, but whenever Israel does what they do, they call it a military operation, right? A sanctioned military operation, or we had to neutralize a threat. But whenever they talk about what they're doing, we have a great ratio of urban warfare, completely switching the language around whenever they kill Palestinians. But when Palestinians retaliate, it's acts of terror, right? So they're very well trained on this when they speak to the media to frame things in a certain way to create a certain narrative.
The recent statement, very clear, coming from...
And you guys know my position. I've given you guys my position a million times on this, but for those of you that are new, I simply think that both the IDF and Hamas are both terrorist organizations, okay? The definition of terrorism, okay, according to the FBI, who is a lead agency that runs terrorism investigations, the calculated use of violence or threat of violence to create fear and achieve political, ideological, or social goals. It often involves targeting civilians and aims to coerce governments or societies into specific actions. The IDF does this too. The only difference is that the IDF is the most well-funded, well-trained, and best-supported terrorist group in the world. That's the only difference. Okay? And I would argue that the IDF causes way more terrorism than any of these Muslim militant groups. Because here's the difference between me and these other idiots. I will acknowledge that Hezbollah is a terrorist group. I'll acknowledge that Hamas is a terrorist group. I'll acknowledge that Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab and all of them are terrorist groups. But if you're going to put them in the box and say that they're terrorists, so are the IDF and the Israelis. And again, if you don't believe me, this is what the IDF used to be. The agencies that created the IDF, the Irgun, Haganah, and you guys can see it right here, Terror Out of Zion, right? Stern Gang. So these three organizations right here, guys, Irgun, Haganah, and Lehi, all of these basically consolidated to create what we have now as the IDF. All right? So when they sit there and try to tell you like, oh no, we're the most moral army in the world, blah, 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 their roots come from terrorism. The state of Israel was created through terrorism. Again, that's why you guys need to watch that documentary I showed you guys that I posted on my channel today before October 7th. It goes through all this stuff in more detail.
From the President of the United States, Trump, saying very clearly that the only way that the hostages will come back is when the Hamas is destroyed. This is not spokesperson of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Israel. This is the President of the United States saying Hamas is not willing to have an agreement and not willing to have a ceasefire.
All right, what about the huge demonstrations on the streets of Tel Aviv against the war? What about the fact that two of your former prime ministers are dead set against continuing the war? What about the fact that the current head of the IDF, the man who's supposed to make this happen in Gaza, he doesn't like this plan either, as well as dozens of former security chiefs,
super unpopular,
intelligence chiefs, military chiefs. I mean, the entire military intelligence establishment, as far as we can tell, of Israel is against this idea. So why are you doing it?
All those demonstrations, all those demonstrators want one thing. They want to see our hostages coming back home. All of us. You know what, Matt? Myself, as a spokesperson of the ministry, as an individual.
And just so you guys know, so when these spokespersons go out, they're instructed that they always have to make the hostages the primary thing, and then they say destroy Hamas. But they'll never talk about what they're really trying to do, which is occupy the strip. They don't say that publicly. But when they go out, they're literally trained, guys. Get back the hostages, destroy Hamas. That's their two objectives. They always say whenever they do a press run. So if you guys notice, whenever Israeli personalities get on TV shows, whether it's like Piers Morgan or on the news or they get interviewed, they always have the same exact talking points. Okay? Every single time. And also, the other interesting thing too that you guys need to know is I did a breakdown. Some this idiot, what is it, Sahar TV or some shit like that? I completely fucking dismantled him. He did a video talking about I'm wrong about Israel or some bullshit like that. And I went through and I systematically destroyed this thing. It's on OSS, guys. You should go check it out. It's on OSS. Went through and systematically debunked all of his goddamn arguments towards me. And one of the things that he mentioned was how the objectives are releasing the hostages and destroying Hamas. But he left out the third thing, and then I kind of show proof of that. How the hostages are not the main priority. Because if it was a high priority, as they claimed, they would have been back by now. But the Israeli government lies and says they're top of the priority, but they're really not.
I want to see the hostages coming back.
Of course, he's saying that. Yep.
Right now. The only problem is we are not negotiating with ourselves.
But sorry to interrupt you. There were...
I already knew what he's going to say. We are negotiating with terrorists.
Large numbers of hostages released after a deal was done, between you and Hamas via the Qataris and the Americans. quite some time ago now, we saw, hundreds of hostages, more than 100 hostages released. But there has to be a deal.
There has to be a deal. And for a deal, you need two to tango. Right now, Israel said yes to every proposal that was put on the table. Again,
That's not true. They say no because they don't want a permanent ceasefire. Dude, the first deal they had in place was a 3-part plan. Okay? And the Israelis didn't take it all the way through because they wanted to start bombing Gaza again. When Trump got sworn, you know what?
And this is not me speaking. This is the United States of America. This is Steve Witkoff saying. This is the president of the United States saying Hamas is not willing to budge. So if you have one side that is willing to have a negotiation, one side that is willing to have a ceasefire, one side that is saying yes to a proposal, and the other side is keep saying no, or spreading this smoke screen. What other option do you have?
There was also a deal on the table at the beginning of the year.
Here we go. I think he's talking about the plan that I was talking about when Trump got sworn in January. Or before he even got sworn in, he had the plan set up.
Seemed to work quite well.
No.
And then
no.
They went along with the deal, and then you broke the ceasefire. Israel broke the ceasefire.
We did not break the ceasefire.
Again, in the interest of time, yes, you did. Yes, you did. Let's not go there. We haven't got enough time for this. You broke the ceasefire. The ceasefire's...
Hey, shout out to this reporter for fucking calling him out, bro, because that's all they do, man, is they fucking lie on this shit, bro.